ever skipped a couple of steps to get to the end result just because you wanted to get something done? Hey there, I am Danielle Zapchenk, and thanks for joining me today on the Parable Podcast. Meet Tracy Zabel, who reminds us through her own story of the impact of finding grace and mercy.
Those years with the understanding of grace and mercy and walking truly with Him every day, it's been so much more impactful than those years not. My encouragement is it's never too late. You're never too messy. You're never too lost. You're never too dirty. None of that. There's always the opportunity of hope.
Here's my conversation with Tracy Zabel. Thrilled to introduce you to my friend Tracy. Tracy and I met a couple years ago, I think, through a baton pass event. And I love when connections are made. And so, Tracy, welcome to the Parable Podcast.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I am so excited to be here. I'll be very transparent. This is my first podcast, so I'm excited for the opportunity and to see what happens.
That's great. And I think it's okay that this is your first podcast experience. I would say, I think I've told you this already, that I feel like I have a lot of first timers. And that's great because I think it allows people to know, like, stories matter. And I think that's my gifting of, like, really bringing confidence and encouragement and just to be a willing listener to hear your story, because obviously I've heard parts of your story, Tracy, and I'm really excited for you to share today. Before we get into it, I would love for you to kind of just talk to me about, like, what's something that brought you joy this week?
What brought me joy this week is the weather. The sunshine has been out this week and it's warm. And I just crave that. And then the winters are hard here in Illinois.
I thought I used to like summer the most, but I think it's spring, because as you're coming out of that winter season, it's just so cool to see like flowers pop up. I'm not the best in planting. I really try. I have like such high goals at the beginning of the year. And then I'm just like, well, we made it halfway. So
right. We tried.
Yes. We tried. Yes. Okay. So what has been maybe like the hardest thing? What's been just a hard part of this season for you?
You know, it's balance of life. So we were talking earlier, as you know, I have 3 boys, married 3 boys. We have such a busy life. Now, that being said, I feel very blessed for that. However, if we're going to be real, it's a lot. It's a lot. And, you know, our boys are junior in high school, freshman in high school, and 5th grade. And I feel like our culture here in the United States, it's like the more, the better. Well, it's not. It's not. And you try to tone it back and you try to peel it back, but it just seems like it's constant. And right now, because of our season of life, it's a lot. And I feel exhausted every day. And I'm thinking, okay, am I taking my vitamins? Am I sleeping? Am I, doing all this stuff, but trying to balance it all by being a good mom, being a good wife, by showing up to all the events. And then you think to yourself, do we really have to do this? Do we have to do all this? And then you're right back to where you started. So I think that's the challenge for me right now. I don't know in particular this week, but I mean, there's a lot going on for us right now in our house, and it's all great. And I will miss it when it's all over with. I really, really will. And everybody says, oh, hold on to it. But some days you're like, my gosh, I just want to be on the couch and do nothing but eat popcorn and watch Netflix. But that's not reality.
Yeah, I would agree with you on the sense of, and it's like also what I'm trying to do, balance for myself, but how do I reflect that back into our family life so that our kids understand that? There was a mom I met this year, her daughter was a senior, and she was involved in everything. And they were every weekend, they were going somewhere or doing some kind of camp. And she's like, well, you only really, I know she's tired, but she really wants to do it. And she's like, you only get this season like once in your life. And I kept thinking to myself, like, okay, yes, that's true that there's these opportunities right now, but now you're training yourself at 18 to say, well, I have to be exhausted. I have to keep going and I have to live up to whatever capacity because maybe this won't come along. So I was like, that was translating into my day to day. I'm like, how are we teaching our kids how to like rest at times? However, they do a good job of it.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Do I know
They know
that?
how to rest.
Especially when they don't want to do the dishes.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm so tired.
Oh, gosh.
But yeah, it's allowing them to be okay with saying, you know what? I don't want to do that. Or I just need a little bit of a timeout from it all, and really taking that time to rest, whatever that rest looks like. But yeah, it's a challenge to try to figure out the balance.
What about, you said your 3 boys, are they graduated yet? What is your age range again?
No. So we have a junior. So we're about to be in the transition of going to college and figuring that out. So that's all heavy too. That's a whole other podcast within itself of like, why do we make it so complicated for these kids and so challenging for these kids to be accepted into these schools? It shouldn't be this hard. I don't know. But anyways, yeah, so we're not at that junction. So we're going into that season of preparing him not only to go to college, but what that looks like every day without us, and for us to be without him. That's a lot, I think, emotionally.
Do you think that as your kids have aged, there is this natural progression, I think just automatically happens in teenagehood, but where there's like a separation because they're growing their sense of independence? I can feel that with our 15-year-old. Last night, she told me I had made these chocolate chip cookies and I went kind of like above and beyond. And I like presented them. I gave them a frosted glass of milk. And she's like, Mom, I don't know how I would like live without you. Like, you're the best, blah, 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 blah. Literally an hour and a half later, she was very much annoyed with me when I told her that she needed to get off the phone with a certain special friend. And so, there's like this like pull of independence. Like, how have you like worked through that, or you're still trying to figure that out? Yeah,
I think that's a challenge for every parent, and first of all, parenting, I think, is one of the hardest jobs. Right. And we as parents are our own worst critics too, sometimes. But yeah, it is a push and pull because, we have a saying in our house. Well, first of all, we have all boys. None of my boys would say, oh, Mom, I couldn't live without you. That would never happen in my house. Ever, ever. Okay. But secondly, I know they're thinking it sometimes. But, I have a saying in my house that I'm not raising boys. I'm raising men. I am raising men. And when there's certain things that happen with them and they get in trouble, I'll say, do you want to be a boy forever or do you want to be a man? Because if I'm raising a man, this is how this situation should have went. But if I'm raising a boy, well, sure, that it could have gone that way. So it's that balance of, first of all, letting them be the age that they are, but yet trying to, prepare them for where they're going. And that's hard. That's really hard. And also going back to culturally, there's so much things that are coming their way culturally, social media, pressures from the outside, from friends, all that other stuff. It's hard. It's hard to have that balance. But yeah, there is a lot of push and pull because I know they need us still, emotionally, physically, all that kind of stuff. But yet they don't want to always admit that. So it's like the give and take of it all, and like knowing when as a mom to step back, let them make mistakes. The big thing right now with high school is to let them speak up for themselves and not be the parent that steps in and does it for them.
That is hard. Yeah.
That's hard. You want to, but they have to learn how to do that. They got to be their own advocate at some junction. That's so hard.
It is. But I think that's like all of those hardships, all of those seasons, all of those little pieces, day-to-day moments, they create the stories, the things that who we ultimately are. That's really what this podcast is about, Tracy, is sharing our stories and learning like those lessons, maybe some of the hard ones, and coming through on the other side and recognizing, okay, like I can see that this is how you are shaping me. So Tracy, I'd love for you to share with us one of your podcast stories. It is a podcast story, but a parable story.
Yeah. So thank you for, letting me be on here again and have this opportunity. When you asked me to be on here, I really was trying to figure out what would be applicable and how it would be applicable. I speak on a lot of heavy topics, and that's not always super fun. Shame, guilt are some of the topics I talk about. But at the same time, when you had reached out to me, again, we're here in Illinois, and our winters are long and they're heavy. And so when things start to thaw out in the spring, beginning is a lot of times when you start doing projects around your house. So we built a house and we moved onto our farm. We have a farm here in central Illinois. And when we moved in and you're doing the outside projects, so this was like 8 years ago or so, you just want everything done. You're kind of at your limits. If anybody's built a house, you know, I just want to get in the house. I just want to move on with my life, right? Mm-hmm. When we moved in, we did our back patio, which we spent a lot of time on, but we didn't do it right. We rushed it. So what does that mean? So what it means is we just put the patio in. We didn't put the foundation in correctly, right? Mm-hmm. So aesthetically, it looked really nice. But foundationally, over 7-8 years, it started to fall apart. Why that reason is because foundationally is our back patio didn't have drainage. It didn't have the correct structural underneath foundation. And you think, who cares, right? It looks great. We got some patio chairs. We're outside. Why does it matter? Well, it does because last summer it started to chip and come all apart. And it was starting to because, like I said, in Illinois, the winters are tough. So the snow would sit on top of it. The rain would come and it had nowhere to drain and flush out. Mm-hmm. So what happens is then it starts to chip and it starts to not look great. But more importantly, you're sitting on the back patio or you're using it and people's feet start to get cut up. Fast forward, you reached out, you wanted me to come talk on the podcast. And I was thinking, what can I talk about? Well, I thought, well, let's talk about real life. Let's talk about what's going on in my house right now. So what we've done is we're redoing our patio. So we had to pull the whole thing back up and then put the foundation in correctly. So level it out, because again, that's another thing that I've learned. We didn't level it out right, put drainage in, and then put the patio back on top. So that way, when the rains come and when the snow comes and everything else, it flushes out and drains correctly, and then it's not getting broken up. So how does that apply? Well, as this was going on, I was thinking about it because this went on for about 3 weeks. And let me pause for a second. The back of our house is all windows, which I love light, like natural light. However, when there's a project going on outside or back of your house, you're in a fishbowl if you're inside the house and there's people outside, or secondarily, you're staring at that project for 3 weeks. And I'm a little OCD on my cleanliness, and I'm like, oh my God, it's madness. So I thought a lot about this project for 3 weeks. And one morning I was having my coffee. I love my morning time, and my mornings are my time. I was having my coffee and I was reflecting on the project. And it just came over me of how much this project of like where we went wrong with it and where we are today fixing it is so much like similar to my walk with the Lord and how I came upon grace and mercy. Now you probably think, well, that's a stretch. What does that mean? So, for a long time, I didn't understand what grace was. Grace was not a word that I grew up with in my house, right or wrong. And, from a dictionary standpoint, I understood what it meant, but I didn't truly understand what it meant. I grew up in the church and I grew up really wanting that relationship with the Lord. But all I thought was when something goes wrong, something goes sideways, you mess up, you ask God forgiveness, you plead God for forgiveness, and then he'll give it to you, and then you move on, and then you just pray you don't mess up again. And so it's just this very transactional, if you will, relationship with the Lord, because that's what I thought, right? And so it was like this cycle of I mess up, I would ask for forgiveness, and then you're back to where you're starting. You pray you don't do it again, but sometimes you do because that's life, right? And life can be really, really messy. But you never feel like, or at least myself, I never felt like truly cleansed and flushed out and understanding, why does he love me this much? Why is he giving me this forgiveness? And then about 14 years ago or something like that, things happened in my life and I truly started to understand what grace and mercy are. And so with that, then I started to really understand how when the Lord gives you grace and mercy, it really flushes you out and you really start to understand this isn't a transactional relationship with the Lord. This is fully 100%. He loves me no matter what I do. He loves me for who I am. I just have to come to him. So going back to the patio, it was like I was putting into terms like that flushing out, taking away all the yuck and the junk, flushing it out, and you're back to the cleanliness of it all. And before it was just sitting there, right? It was sitting there and it was chipping away. And I think that's kind of how I felt before I understood what grace and mercy was. It was chipping away at my soul and some beings. I wanted to have that relationship, but I didn't understand it fully and walk completely with him until I understood what grace and mercy is, and so grace is receiving what we do not deserve. So forgiveness, yes, but also his everlasting love, like I was mentioning. No matter how big of a mess you made, he gives you the grace upon it. He gives you salvation, everlasting salvation. And then mercy is withholding or not receiving what we do deserve. So persecution, abandonment. He's never going to leave us. No matter how big of our sin or little of our sin, he's never going to leave us. He's there by our side. What we do deserve is eternal punishment. He's going to still love us and forgive us, and it's going to be okay. So once I started understanding that piece of the Lord, everything changed for me. It was night and day. And so I think that's such a piece of the pie. I just want to really let others understand, if they don't, that no matter how big your mess is or how big your sin is, because we all have it. I mean, if we're going to walk authentically, like that seems to be such a buzzword today, we're all messy and life is really hard and we all mess up, but it's what we do with it after that and how we let the Lord walk beside us. I'm so broken and I need you. And I don't just want your forgiveness. I want more than that. And so understanding that he's going to be there no matter what. He's not going to abandon me. He's with me every day. He's with all of us every day. And just to obediently say yes. And so letting his forgiveness and mercy and grace just flow over you is the beauty of it.
Did the patio get done?
Yes, praise the Lord. So me and one of my dogs are so happy that it's done.
Yes, just one of your dogs. Just
the other one is like so chill. But,
gosh. So. Well, first of all, I love taking real life situations. I guess that's why I like parables. And then like connecting it to like a bigger underlying story. I speak a couple times a year at our church and I always do this where I'm like, people are like, where are you going with this, Danielle? And I'm like, let me tell you how this connects. So this resonates with me quite a bit, Tracy. And I think that so many people use, the words like, we just want something done. We rush into something. And maybe like at first glance, it looks like it's fine. Like everything on the surface looks good. And unfortunately, it's like that deeper layer that either needs to be healed or some other work needs to be done, or maybe it just needs to be adjusted. I would be interested to know, for you, like, did you recognize that in your own life personally? Has there been time and time again where like somebody has to remind you of that? You knew it needed to be done, or has it surprised you and then you realized it after the fact?
To allow him to flow that grace and mercy over me. So when the light bulb per se went off, and that's a whole other talk, is, it was a hard season in my life. And it took me a long time to get to that junction to understand it. And I'm not being funny. I'm being very serious when I say I praise the Lord every day for that awakening. And it did change me. But, since that time frame, I'm very hard on myself, which is not always the greatest. But yeah, sometimes you do need remembrance, and you need that kind of what we were talking about earlier, that time to pause and sit with whatever you're dealing with versus rushing through it. I think that's why I'm so big about my morning time. Yeah. Because it allows me that time to really sit there and be with the Lord. And whether it's doing a devotional or it's doing, there's many things I do in the morning, just reading through pieces of scripture, and to just really let him sit with me and really present everything at his feet, right? Because I think we live, like I said, in a society that is so fast and furious, right? And you just want to pump the brakes. And I think if you don't intentionally make that time to pump the brakes, it's hard to let that saturate and flow through you. Yeah. Because Satan wants us to rush through it. Satan wants us not to feel his love or feel his grace and mercy. Satan wants us to fail and feel that failure, right? But that's not the Lord's plan. That's not the Lord's plan.
You mentioned before your patio, was it like stone or was it cement?
Here's the embarrassing part. It was pavers, but they weren't put in correctly. So again, aesthetically, it looked great, right? Yes. Which is such a parable for life, right? There's so many people aesthetically that look great, but underneath it all, they're a hot hot mess. And I can say that's part of my story, is that was a piece of my pie, is trying to really be perfect and look aesthetically and have my family together. And whatever that perfect looks like to everybody is different. However, but underneath it all, it's a hot mess. And so how do you clean up? Because you got to get to the root of the problem, or the core of whatever's going on. Because at the end of the day, you can aesthetically look so great, but if you're a hot mess underneath, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, totally agree with you that you have to address those problems first, because you had mentioned that people's feet were getting cut up on the patio. And I think that if, we continue with that analogy, sometimes if that work or whatever is going on in your world, the foundation is not set correctly, that is going to affect other people. And what would be your encouragement of the things where we have to work on ourselves, because that is just going to really affect and help the relationships externally around us in our life?
So I think there's a couple pieces to that. I have a birthday coming up in a couple weeks. I love birthdays. I think they're such a gift from the Lord every day and every year you get. But I'm not ashamed to say I'm going to be 48. So this awakening, if you will, happened 14 years ago. So I lived more time not understanding it than to where I am today. So my encouragement to others is it's never too late to accept the Lord into your heart and to say yes. And to B is to walk beside him and let him take control, because that's really what it is, and to walk authentically with him. And my encouragement with that is, even though it's only been that amount of time has been less than my lifespan thus far of with and without that understanding of grace and mercy, those years with the understanding of grace and mercy and walking truly with him every day, it's been so much more impactful than those years not. My encouragement is it is never too late.
Yeah.
You're never too messy. You're never too lost. You're never too dirty. None of that.
Yeah.
Because there's always the opportunity of hope. That's hope. That's our hope every day.
You had mentioned for 3 weeks, you were just kind of staring at the situation in the
and shaking.
And I would have to say, I don't even know how to explain it, but sometimes when things are out or they're not set in place of where I believe that they should be, that is literally in my brain. And I need to remove it or get out of it in order for me to think straight. That's just how, that's my own thing. So I can see how 3 weeks, you're just and obviously there's a time that it's going to end. And I think for many of us, we know something is off or there is something that needs to be fixed. And we're staring at it, but we're just I don't really know what next to do. And, you had talked about the grace and mercy, but if somebody's kind of feeling there's something off in my life and I just can't really put a finger on it, what would be your thoughts on how to decipher and drill down into what that is for them?
I think there's many people that don't understand it all, and that's okay. And they're trying to figure it out. We're all trying to figure it out, by the way. Those that are still walking with them every day. There's plenty of days I'm thinking, did I get anything right today? Did I just screw it all up? We're all trying to figure it out every day. Nobody's perfect. They're not, no matter what social media says, by the way.
Yes.
So
liars.
Liars, all of your liars. But I think the important thing to remember is we don't live in this world alone. We are here to live in community. And so, it's so easy to say nobody else has a problem like mine, or nobody understands this, or this is too messy for someone to understand, or I'm embarrassed, I'm ashamed. But the more you bring truth to light, the more easier it is to let go of that control and to untangle that mess of whatever the problem is. I think the more you bring in other people, whether it's a friend, it's a pastor, it's a therapist, whatever it might be, whatever it might look like in your world, I think it's easier to start untangling the knot. So community, I think that helps a ton. Going back to, I'm saying this buzzword that we're having so much in our world today, authentically, is to be truthful. Be truthful as you walk in that community with whoever that might be of this is what's going on. I don't understand it. I don't know how to fix it, but can we just talk?
Yeah.
And that's hard. That first step of just talking with whoever it might be. And maybe it's just talking with the Lord. And that's okay too. But it's that first step of just truly being with someone else or the Lord and really saying, here's what's going on. How do I take the next step? Right. But you got to start. You got to start somewhere to communicate about it.
I am definitely drawn to people who are speaking in an authentic way. There's just like something that I can just sense. Not that I won't talk to them or anything, right. But I'm like, okay, if I had to pick two people or out of two people, which one would I go to dinner or coffee with? I'm always going to pick this person over the other just because I'm like, I know I can be fully myself. They are being honest with me. Like that's just more fun and real. So I totally understand that. How would you say that this idea of understanding grace and mercy has impacted, you talked about 3 boys, you're married. How has that flowed into those relationships to give you a new perspective in that capacity?
Well, like I said, I mean, literally, I'm not kidding at all. It changed everything. It changed all my relationships, whether it be my marriage, how I went about motherhood, my friendships, how I spent my time. You're talking about, I don't want to go to coffee with somebody or whatever that we're just going to talk about the weather. Because time is a gift. It is a true gift. It changed my marriage. And I'll start with that by saying, this is a two-way street. So as much as I need him to be grace-filled to me, I need to be grace-filled to him. And so, and to give that time of grace and mercy, because marriage is hard. Yeah. I think there's so many things they don't tell you before you walk down the aisle. I really do. I wish there was a really good pamphlet before you walk down the aisle, but there's not. And so you figure it out and you fumble and you mess up along the way, right? But it's really to take that pause and to, and to give grace and mercy. And the same thing with motherhood. Like motherhood is really hard too, right? And like we were talking about the season of life of growing these boys into men, it takes so much patience and it takes so many deep breaths and just walk away, just give it a second. Yeah. Like for instance, last night when my middle son had a pen in the dryer that exploded, I just said, I got to walk away. I got to walk away before I explode, just like that pen exploded. Yeah. So it's really to understanding, we're all just trying our best every day. Yeah. We truly are. And that includes our kids. That includes our husband. That includes our coworkers, and everybody has a bad day and everybody messes up. But it's how to realize it's okay if you mess up, but how are we going to move forward from here? So I think it just changes everything. It changes how you look at life itself.
As we wrap up, Tracy, I am interested to know, because we're always learning, we're always growing, fixing that foundation. What would you say you still want to encourage more grace in for yourself when you think about your day to day? Sometimes like we get like down on ourselves or we're just like, oh, why do I do this? Is there any area you're like, gosh, I wish I could just give myself a little bit more grace in this one spot?
For myself personally, I don't know if you're into the Enneagram. I'm an Enneagram 8. And like with any Enneagram, you can either be super healthy or unhealthy, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. I've been through the unhealthy phase. I feel like I'm much more healthy now. But with that, I have a lot of want to control things. I want to get everything just right with the 8s. If you understand the Enneagram, you'll understand. So it's giving myself grace. I am really hard on myself and I'm really quietly internally hard on myself, which is not good. Yeah. So it's not like I'm telling my girlfriends, man, I feel like I'm failing. And I feel like I probably should tell them a little bit more sometimes because it goes back to that trying to make sure everything looks like it's perfect. Who cares at the end of the day? Are you raising good kids? Yeah. Do you have a solid marriage? And do you love the Lord with everything you have? That's what matters. So for myself is giving myself more grace of, you know what? You don't have to have it all together. Just try. Try. Sometimes as a mother, we give all this advice or we say things all the time to our kids, but yet we do not swallow the same advice for ourselves.
All the time, Tracy. Yes.
And so one of the sayings in my house is, did you do your best? If you did your best, and then that's all that matters. That's all mom and dad care about. I don't care about the grades or how many shots you took in the game or blah, blah, blah. Did you do your best? And that can look different all the time because not every day is peachy. So I think for myself is giving myself more grace to say, did you do your best today? You did? Okay. You did okay. So that's probably the part I need to give myself more grace with. Yeah.
I do that all the time where I'll say something to our kids, encourage them, remind them of something. And then just God, I feel like he just like taps me on the shoulder and said, yes, like, and that's for you too. I'm like, I know. Oh gosh, this was such a great conversation, Tracy. And just, this is what I think is so beautiful about stories is that it can just be so simple, but underlying there is like the grace and the mercy. Like we just need that reminder each and every single day. So Tracy, if people wanted to get connected to you, what is the best way that they could do that?
Yeah, I love to chat with others about this. So you can reach out to me per my email and or on my website. My website will just basically take you to my email, but my website is tracyzabel.com. And I'd love to hear from you guys.
Well, Tracy, thank you so much for being on the Parable Podcast today.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Danielle.
Have you ever come to an end of a big life change, or maybe you're just trying to conquer an IKEA furniture bill? I hope Tracy's story resonated with you today. To connect with Tracy, simply visit DanielleZapchenk.com for details. And here are 2 reflection questions from our time together today. Number 1, what project, life choice, or maybe it was an internal decision you have gone through hastily, but you didn't have a good foundation for? Maybe just kind of reflect back and think, okay, yeah, I didn't have a good foundation for that, and here's how we had to fix it. Number 2, reflect on God's grace and mercy this week. How was that evident in your life? And take some time to thank Him for it. Before you go, could you do me a favor and click on the show notes and take my listener survey? And by doing so, I'm going to give you 10 tips to enhance your conversations and listen really well. Thank you so much for doing that. This episode was edited by my amazing husband, Eric Zapchenk, and we hope you are encouraged to think about your own story. Remember, your parable showcases how God will always be a strong foundation. We'll see you back again next week on the Parable Podcast.